Well, hello everyone. I'm sitting here with the fantastic Bobby Foster, and Bobby is really one of those extraordinary people that has really come to bat as a coach to really help others. He is a shine your light coach, and his gift is that he helps other people to get their message out so they can help people that need them the most. I'm wondering, Bobby, would you kind of kick us off with talking a little bit around how you got into coaching, and then we'll go from there. That'd be great.
Yeah, thank you. So what got me into coaching was I graduated college around 3 years ago. And right after I graduated college, I was, very, very lost. And also just emotionally, my father just passed away too recently at that time. And I just had no idea what I wanted to do. And I stumbled across a life coach going to like a network event. And I signed up and I stayed with her for around 2 years. And it was just like this amazing transformative experience. Like I said, like I went from, being like really depressed and like not having any clear idea of what I wanted to do. And then when I ended my sessions with her, I had published a book, became an advocate for cystic fibrosis, which is a genetic disorder I have. Just got like my health right. And it was so amazing. Like I wanted to be able to do that for other people. So I started taking the steps I needed to take to be a coach myself.
That's awesome. And what I'm hearing is you were really inspired by your experience working with a coach and the results you got.
Yeah, definitely. I
Yeah.
mean, it was, I had referred my best friend to her too, because it was just so, it was just so life changing. The space that she created, that coaches create, it was something that I never really experienced before. Like being able to go into a place and focus on myself and where I wanted to go. Like, being very like, kind of like integrating. It was the first time I felt like I was okay with who I was in that moment and able to change whatever I wanted to moving forward. Like that was the first time I felt like in power in that kind of way.
I'm feeling warm and fuzzy over that.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, it does feel pretty good. Yeah.
It does.
So I'm curious, the book that you wrote, is that the book that you had, Catch Your Breath, or is that a second book?
Yes, that's that book, Catch Your Breath.
Yeah.
That was basically a book I was writing. So I went to college for creative writing. And one of the lessons I learned in there, which I love so much, is write about what you don't know, actually, because it allows you to discover. It's such a discovering process while you're writing. And so that book was really much drawn out of this. I was trying to learn how to manifest my life in the way I wanted to. And so as I was writing this book, I was just, discovering lessons and sharing everything that I was learning during my coaching sessions and just epiphanies I was having during the writing process. And I love that book. I love the way I wrote that book. It was such an amazing experience. And, it's been able to touch a lot of people's lives too, which has been awesome.
That is awesome. And I know today you're working with people that really want to get their message out. Talk more about that.
Yeah. So, you know, I really want to be able to help people that feel like they have, something to say or even something to do that helps that allows other people to access their own light, which is why it's called spread your light coaching. And so I believe, the process is when we discover our own light, our own unique talents, our own, messages, and we spread them, which is the important part. Cause like a lot of people do discover that, I feel like, but a lot of people I feel like don't take the steps to put it outside of themselves. And it's in that sharing, in that community, that I feel like the real power comes from. And so, yeah, like people who are they feel like they have something to say or some way to, affect other people with their light. I really want to help them be able to become clear on what that is and, help them, take steps to get it out there.
Mm-hmm. And I know like one of the ways you're helping people is through social media.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, before I started getting life coached, I was actually running a social media marketing company. And so I just learned a lot of the ins and outs of how social media works. So a lot of my community is online and, the people I work with, if that's like where they also want to reach their community, I have a lot of insight on how to make that happen.
Yeah. Well, and it feels so congruent with, the fact that we live in this digital world and we have these communities all over the world that we can touch. And even like you said, like your book, has helped a number of people because it's available on your website for anyone. I'm curious, like when you are working with someone that wants to get their message out, like let's say I come to you and go, Bobby, I'm really comfortable with, I know who I am. I have a lot of things I want to say, but I really don't know how to reach someone out there.
Yeah.
How might you help me?
I would say, I feel like the first step is, okay, you were saying what you want to say. How do you reach someone? I feel like the first important part is, I personally, I always feel like I'm trying to figure out how to explain this. Um, I feel like our superpowers come alive, if you will, when we acknowledge our suffering, like something we've been suffering through, and then we've learned how to work through it in some type of capacity. I say speak to that, and then you'll just know who you're trying to talk to at that point, because you'll be working with someone who's suffered in a way that you can understand, and then it's just about finding out where they may be, which could be Facebook groups online, or even in person. You may be able to find things like on Meetup, the Meetup app or something like that, and just talking to those people, being a part of the community. Because at the end of the day, like, yeah, it would be great. I mean, it is great when we do spread our message, but at the same time, it's not about, preaching your message. It's not about being at the top and, maybe necessarily looking down on people or anything like that. It's about being a part of the group that you're trying to reach. And so I would say, find out where they are, and then become part of the group, and just, add your value where you can.
Absolutely. And as you were talking, I was thinking about, it's like finding your tribe as well as creating your tribe.
Yes. Yeah, I feel like it's a perfect balance of both. And sometimes it isn't, because like sometimes, you may not necessarily find a tribe that, you're really vibing with or something like that. And I mean, I have an example of that recently. So I have a 2-year-old who's about to be 3, and I was looking for other parents to like hang out with, because like none of my current friends have children. And I was just looking up, something where like a parent meetup or something. And there's a whole bunch of mommy groups, but there was like no daddy groups. And so I'm putting together like a young Black men father group, where we all get together every 2 weeks, and we're just talking about what it is to be better men, better fathers, how we could be in our communities and make them better and things like that. And so that was something I had to create. And I feel like even that, like starting small, like it's going to be about 5-6 people that I have so far. But I feel like in this day and age of social media, I feel like people have this notion that, when you start something, it has to be this grandiose, big, 1,000,000,000 people venture. And it doesn't. It doesn't.
I fully agree. And I remember years ago in digital marketing, it was like, your list of 10,000 people. And, it's always been my experience, quality over quantity. I mean, you can work with a list of 100 people if you've got the right people on your list or on the right people in the group.
Yes.
So I'm wondering, because one of the things that I've discovered, building my own tribes and helping other people in their own way, kind of grow, obviously as coaches, one of the things I notice that happens a lot is people will go like, I don't know if I have anything to say or anything to say that's important.
Yeah, so I mean, that is definitely, I feel like completely natural. It's kind of a little bit also like once you start speaking on something you're not too sure you should speak on, you may have some like imposter syndrome or something like that. But I feel like it's in the expression that has the power. And so I feel like the more you express, maybe you do find out that something isn't necessarily going with your message. You fine tune it, you clarify on what you want to express, the more you express it. And so once again, I feel like the fear there comes from, okay, if I say this thing, what if it's wrong? What if it doesn't resonate with people? And I feel like that fear only really matters when you're trying to like get something from other people from what you're trying to say. I feel like when it comes to expression, if you say something, there's going to be people that are going to receive it and there's going to be people that don't receive it. But I believe the power is in the action of the expressing itself. So I feel like if that's where your focus is, like I'm going to say this and spread my light, if you will, that's the focus. That's where all your focus has to be at.
I really want to underline, bottom line, stamp this. Seriously, because there's so many times, and I'm just, how we're talking to someone and we go into our own story in our head. And, I have a speaking gig in front of about 500 people coming up, and I start getting really anxious around what am I going to say? Is it going to resonate? And even though I could catch myself doing that, and what I'm hearing from you, it's like, it's that expectation as opposed to I'm here to share, I'm here to give, versus I'm expecting that my efforts are going to get rewarded or respected. So it's taking that equation out of being your best and doing your best. And what I'm hearing is spread your wings, spread your light, but not expect something of the other people, aka the audience. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, I think that's 100% right. And I feel like it's more about how you say things than what you say, actually. And so I believe, it's the intention behind the words and the space you're trying to create, I feel like is the important part. And if people, can experience and share within that space, what you are saying, I feel like that's just where the power is. And, I hosted my first mastermind here in Orlando, Florida. When was that? Last week. And I was really nervous because I didn't know if people were going to show up. I didn't know if like what I was going to say was going to resonate, all that stuff we're talking about. And, I always have these thoughts, but then when I get up and speak, everything just becomes so still and peaceful for me. Like that's how I feel inside. And I feel like that just resonates in the room with my speech. And that's what I kind of mean as far as it's more about how you say something than what you say. Because people feel behind what you're saying. That's what people feel when you speak.
Absolutely. And it also sounds like really truly coming from your authentic self and your heart.
Yes.
Versus what I imagine, if someone's in their head trying to please someone or all the millions of things that we get caught up in, that's going to send a different message. And almost, just from my experience, like if I'm really anxious about something, I'm sending my anxiety out.
Yeah.
And then other people are like, why do I feel really uncomfortable? I love her message, but
yeah, it's true. I feel like, it's important to, whether it's a speech or you're talking with a friend or a family member or whatever it is, whenever you're trying to express yourself, I would say an important thing is get yourself prepared before you enter that space. In that, you do become aware of like your nerves or whatever it may be. But just have a knowing of how you want to be in the space when you get into it, when you're starting to express yourself. I feel like that's really important.
Yeah, I would imagine some mindfulness techniques or things like that might come into play.
Yes, I feel like I do that a lot. And that's what I was saying, like be aware of how you're feeling and don't judge yourself for whatever it is you are feeling. Cause I feel like that, I'm reading this book right now and it has this metaphor. It talks about, it's this Buddhism book. And it's talking about when we suffer in life, a lot of the times, it's from say like an arrow, right? It's that first arrow and it hurts, right? And, that could be your nerves or it could be whatever it may be. But then the second arrow, if it was to hit in that exact same spot, that's when it like really, really hurts. And that's when we add our fears on top of it and our anxieties and our judgments. And so if we were to just leave our feelings be in whatever we are feeling and don't constantly attack it over and over ourselves, we allow it to be. And I feel like that's important also when you're trying to express yourself. Because if you're feeling judgmental of yourself, kind of like you're saying, it's going to go off into other people and it's going to enter that space and people may feel judgmental about themselves on like whatever it is you are expressing.
Absolutely. And it almost kind of brings us back to what you were first talking about, is that courageous space that a coach offers someone.
Mm.
So you can almost start to feel safe in that relationship, and then with that relationship expand and grow your wings and spread your light.
Yes. And I feel like the expansion part of that is so important because, you know, if it was I don't feel like coaching would be nearly as powerful if the whole point of it was to make people feel empowered just in that space between coach and client. The
Yeah.
real amazing part is leaving, you know, like the client leaving and going and bringing that space everywhere else in their lives. And so that's the part I just love so much about what empowerment is. And so, you know, with my coaching, that's why, you know, spread your light. Like, I love that process of someone, say, having an aha moment, and then they go and they just spread it everywhere in their lives with them. Like, I love it. If it fuels me, it inspires me, and it keeps me coming back to want to coach all the time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, and it brings up, even just someone that comes into coaching. I mean, one of my favorite things, just being in a similar viewpoint, is when someone comes in and they discover themselves, very similar to what you're talking about, people that want to get their message out, and they start to realize that they are empowered and that they are the one who empowers themselves. And then suddenly now there's this luminary that's out there, taking on the world in ways they never thought, whether it's a teacher suddenly, writing a book, or someone out there speaking, or even someone that's just bolder in their own community. And so I'm just so grateful that you are out there perpetuating the light.
Oh, thank
Yeah.
you. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, I totally know what you mean by that. And when you were saying that, I feel like something that, you know, this is actually going to be my next mastermind that I'm hosting next weekend. Um, you know, I feel like there's a caution there though, which I had to learn myself, where, you know, I feel like when people get empowered, sometimes they'll take that and they will try to impose it on someone else because they're feeling like so lovely about whatever it may be. They want like someone else to like get it with them. And that's something that that's something that, as you know, the coaching I am doing, I feel like I run into quite a bit. And so that's something that I like want to caution people. And it goes back to expressing yourself once again. The beauty in having your aha moment and wanting to share it with somebody, you know, share it and feel great about sharing it and knowing it for yourself, but never impose it on somebody else.
Yeah.
Because then, you know, that it's off-putting to the next person.
Yeah. Well, it's almost a fine dance of really sharing things and then being willing that someone else may not want to hear it, and being willing to like just let that go and move on.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And I feel like when we're talking about being a messenger, sharing your message, it's just so that I feel like that lesson is just so important because not everybody is going to resonate with what you're saying. And I feel like that's why it's important to find your tribe, because those are the people that will resonate with what you're saying. And, you know, you'll be able to have just more open ears, open hearts, and your words will be able to touch more people. And so I feel like that's why it's just important to always surround yourself, or if you can speak, like this is why it's important to know exactly kind of like what you are trying to get across,
Mm-hmm.
because there's a big difference. You can have the best message in the world, but if you say it in front of the wrong audience, you know, you know, you'll be talking to a wall a little bit. And so, yeah, I feel like that's why it's important to, you know, get some clarity on what exactly it is that you're sharing.
Yeah. Well, I've even had the experience where I was really clear in my message, and I got invited to speak to an audience. Other people, the people that invited me were really jazzed about what I was saying, but they
Mm-hmm.
put me up in front of an audience that I was way off the charts in terms of what they were ready to hear.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, honest to God, the most paralyzing experience. I mean, I remember my body just froze. My arms couldn't go up because I could just feel that I wasn't. And so I just had to find this part of me inside to just go on with the show and to
Mm-hmm.
let it go immediately. And what was interesting about it was I had a handful of people that came up with me after that presentation that said, "You spoke to me intimately. Do not stop. This is
Mm.
not your tribe."
Yeah.
And it was so reassuring that, I wasn't completely in the wrong place. But, it was just one of those situations where someone really loved what I was doing, really felt like it would help their audience, but their audience wasn't ready to hear it. I think, nowadays, because there's a lot more awareness around some things I was talking about, I think it would have been more received. But just that reality of really working through my own inner demons, that I wasn't a failure, that, you know, my message wasn't important, you know. And it really sounds like that's one of the secrets to your sauce, is you can really help people to get beyond that, those blocks that come within, and to really brighten the world, I guess, in a way.
Yeah, and I feel like those experiences are just as important as the ones that go well.
Pain.
I mean, as a performer, you know, I do spoken word poetry as well. And yeah, you just have dead crowds sometimes, you know, people that just don't really get what you're saying, whatever it may be, just not resonating with it. And I feel like the important thing there is, well, one, in my own experience, recognizing that, yeah, like just not everyone vibes with what you're doing, and that's okay. Two, I feel like you can kind of go one or two ways like kind of like after that happens. You can like stay strong with what you're believing in, like through the adversity, or then you can start to second guess, kind of like, should I be talking about something else? Is this really true? You know, something like that. And I feel like it's a great opportunity to, you know, double down on like what you do believe in. And then also like, say like someone does give you criticism or advice or whatever it may be, it's also a great chance to listen, because maybe, you know, there is something that you have to add to what you're saying or change to what you're saying. You might have some epiphany within yourself. And that's what, always be open to that constructive criticism, and listen to what other people are saying too. That's a very important part.
Absolutely. And have a coach by your sides for the times when you can't listen.
Yeah. I mean, even as a coach, you know, I feel like I'm always listening and fine tuning what I'm doing, you know, depending on what my tribe wants, like what my fans want or what my audience wants. Because, you know, one thing I'm big on with, even when it comes to spreading your light, I feel like one of the major, you know, keys to that is acceptance. And so, for example, on my Facebook, where I get a lot of engagement on there, I was like, you know, what is the hardest thing in your life to accept? I just put that up there. I got like 200 comments on it. And a lot of them were saying, you know, pretty much death and heartbreak were like the two really big things. And it's, you know, you can say it's I attracted that into my life or something, but those are two things that I have like a lot of experience dealing with. And so I'm writing more blog posts to that topic. I'm doing more podcasts on that topic, as far as, you know, accepting death, accepting heartbreak, and like what comes of that, like, and just everything about it. And so I feel like it is important to, you know, listen and see where you can add value.
Absolutely. Well, this has been incredibly rich. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, is there anything that you would like to add in that we haven't touched on?
Let's see. Anything I'd like to add on? I feel like just as I was talking about acceptance right there, I would just want to say that, you know, in this day and age, I feel like, because I was also talking about my book and manifestation, I feel like in this day and age, there has been a miscommunication on what it is to be, you know, positive and abundant. Because I feel like those are like very hot topics at the moment. Mm-hmm. And I feel like in life, you have to accept, you know, all these negative things that happen, if you will. Don't run away from those and feel like you're calling into your life more negative things. Like if you're kind of like staying in that place, I would say the negative experiences in your life give you that gateway that you need to see how meaningful, you know, positive things are. And it's a great opportunity. I feel like if that's happening in your life, it's just as important to listen and understand and discern, you know, why those things are popping up, why those feelings are popping up. And don't just try to sweep them under the rug in hopes to be positive. I just feel like I've been running into that a lot, so I wanted to add that.
Yeah. Well, and it's also, you know, as you're saying this, for someone, especially with your audience that has a message out there, maybe these are the little prompts for the teacher and the educator and the messenger to come alive.
Yeah.
I always think that.
I mean, bringing it back to the messaging part, you know, one of my favorite rappers is Kendrick Lamar. And I was watching an interview by him. And he was saying one of the things that he lives by is always telling both sides of the story. And like, that's what makes his music human, if you will. And I feel like I've applied that in so many different areas of my life, because if you were to take a part out of the whole, you end up glorifying something, or you end up, just dwelling in something. The more you can see the bigger picture, the more you feel connected to yourself, connected to other people, and it just builds empathy and understanding. So in your message, don't leave out the nitty gritty details that aren't necessarily good. Like, bring those to the table as well, because our suffering is just as important as our happiness and our joy. That's how we can connect with people even more, is when we understand their pain and their suffering and what they're going through. And just speaking of my own experience, I actually always open up my talks with a pretty sad spoken word poem. But I feel like what it does is it allows the room to then feel their own emotions and kind of what they've been hiding and trying to suppress while I give my talk. And so it just opens up the room for empathy, like, right away, because I'm pretty much owning and showing and exposing and being vulnerable, like this, dark side of me, if you will. And so I just feel like, bring that to the table too in your message.
Absolutely. Well, if someone wanted to learn more about you, they would go to bobbyfoster.com. Is that right?
BobbyFosterSpeaks.com.
Okay, forgot the speak. Sorry about that. And I'll be sure. And I do have, you also mentioned the book that you're reading. I think a few people might actually be interested in that.
What is it called? It is called The Mud and the Lotus.
Have
you read that?
I've heard of it. I haven't read it.
It's a great book. And I can't pronounce his name, the author's name. It's like Thich. He has a whole bunch of books. I'm just kind of like going through all of them at the moment.
Fabulous.
But yeah, I love it. It's been really, really, really good.
Well, I want to say thank you so much for being part of this and being part of our community and lighting the way. And I will certainly put your website and the book and some of the resources. And if you have other things that you want to share, you can email them to me and we'll add them into the mix. So awesome. Thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure. And it's always a delight to see you shining.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.